And today with us, we have Adam, who's our co-founder and CTO. And firstly, I'd love to learn more about you, Adam. So tell me more about how did you actually find yourself in the AI agent space, and what has your background been like so far?
Yeah, so my name is Adam, one of the co-founders of OpenGradient. We started around 2 years ago, and previously I was a software engineer and tech lead at Palantir. So I was one of their core engineers who built out the foundations of their AI platform, which is now called AIP. So we did a lot of work around integrating LLMs into their products and into their platform. We also built an internal agent framework, which I believe is not publicly released yet. I don't know if it will be. But we did a lot of interesting work around reasoning and tool calls, and very similar to LangChain in the early days. And also built some interesting tech demos for government and commercial customers. So that's kind of how I got into this space.
Awesome. And Illia, to the man who is half the reason for our jobs today, because you created the transformer architecture. And I'd love to learn more about, when it comes to near specifically, like how do you think about AI agents evolving, and what is it critically that we need to spend most time focusing on as a space? So I'd love to learn more how you think here.
Yeah, I think a lot of word agent been thrown around, and people have very different meaning under it. I think there's a spectrum. I call it like a autonomousness spectrum, where on one side you have effectively just pieces of software that use AI that we call agents. But they all run effectively within the same context. They have access to the same information. They are operating kind of under similar goal setting. And then as you move on the other side of the spectrum, you have a fully autonomous agent. So for example, we have like couple demos of that where it's given a mission, it kind of has its own resources, has its own money, and it operates kind of its own context and way of doing things. And there's no owner or no other. Maybe there's some governance on top of it, but there's no like other counterparty that can control C it or stop it, right? That's a very different size, right? From like pieces of software that runs on your computer to fully autonomous, effectively business that has its own intelligence and operations and finances. And so there's a lot of stuff in between that we call in different ways, but I think like there is a kind of what's been happening on this like from a single perspective, right? I think when you were talking about LangChain and like a couple of years ago, a lot of it was about just like a design of how to use AI tools, right? It was a lot how to manage context. As AI tools get better, like they kind of do a lot more of it themselves, right? Like the context management. So like the agentic part of it is kind of gets less and less, right? And like even, I mean, I was mentioning this earlier, MCP servers are really just a hack because like AI now can write the code to call APIs, and if you give it just the run command, it'll just do it. And so MCP is just like a way to hack, like to speed that up and kind of make it more robust. So that's as I said, a very big spectrum. I think from a blockchain perspective now, obviously privacy verifiability, I think we both all agree here, important. I was just talking about commerce. I think the autonomousness is really interesting because it's kind of very understudied, and there's a whole governance question of that. Like, let's imagine you start an agent, and that agent figures out how to amass a lot of money, and then decides that we should make clippies out of everyone, right? The usual theory. And so, like, what is the governance framework on that? Should we stop the blockchain that it runs on, that it has money on? Like, what is the approach here? And I think there's a lot of interesting questions there that are pretty understudied right now.
That's actually an excellent answer, and something that builders should spend a lot of time deep diving on, because this is a very understudied and under-researched domain as it is today. But yeah, coming back to the topic of the conversation, which is the agentic internet, I'd love to learn more about what is this agentic internet and how is it different from where we are today. And maybe Adam, you can go first and tell us more about what you think.
Yeah, I think the agentic internet is like another buzzword like agents that's a bit hard to define. But I think for me the difference is that right now, if you look at how people use the internet, it's kind of like a pull-based model where user opens up their browser, does some Google search, opens up different websites, tries to gather as much information as they can, and then maybe they make a decision and then take an action like buying some product or some service or booking a flight, for example. So the user is kind of acting as a glue between all these different websites and information. Whereas in the agentic internet, how it changes is you as a user just provide a task or a specific goal that you want to achieve to an agent. And then an agent goes out into the digital space and does this research for you, and then maybe takes an action at the end, and then synthesizes all this information. So it kind of flips the script. And you no longer have to process everything that you find online or everything that you can find on these websites. And I think that significantly changes how people use the internet and how the internet is going to be built in the future.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. And I'd love to learn both of your visions for the evolution of the space. Like if everything, let's start with Illia. Like if everything that you're planning succeeds and if everything goes right, what do you think the world is going to look like in the next 5 years?
We're all chilling on the beach. That's I mean, that's a good question. I think I was kind of showcasing some of the examples of indeed like this world where agents are becoming kind of our representative on internet, in the world, and indeed the commerce moves in that direction where, again, between blockchain serving as settlement layer, verification layer, ability to kind of facilitate this counterparty risks. I think the important part, just like the cost of commerce, goes down dramatically, the cost of making kind of these transactions. And so I think what this means is on one side, we get a lot more personalized kind of, I call it like life plan, right? Right now, you kind of, maybe it was New Year, everybody was writing their resolutions, right? Who actually fed them into AI and tell them to like get you to actually do them, right? But like that's effectively like what you can imagine, right? Like your AI actually is there to facilitate you actually getting those things done, right? You said you're gonna go to gym. Well, AI scheduled it on your calendar and wakes you up with an alarm to go there. Right? You said you want to eat healthier. Well, instead of now doom scrolling DoorDash and picking the whatever fast food, it's actually pre-planned the meal plans and they already get delivered and ready to go. Right? So things like that, like you're actually getting a lot more structured kind of life support as if you had someone on your side, like imagine like an angel on your side that is continuously ensuring that you are following toward the goals you have. So that's kind of the user-owned AI vision. But then underneath, right, to facilitate that, like the important part is the world has limited amount of resources and our needs are unlimited, right? Our wants are unlimited, right? And so you need to balance that. You need to manage that. This is where kind of traditionally the economies have failed or succeeded if they manage this well or not. And so I think, again, reducing the drag on the economy from the legal, from the dispute resolution, from kind of financial system, really smoothing that out will kind of dramatically change the abundance of assets and resources that people have. So those are really kind of like two sides, for me, of the same coin in a way, pun intended, that I think we're trying to achieve with these technologies.
And before we come to Adam's vision for the next 5 years, Illia, I'd love to learn more about, like, in this world where it sounds like these agents autonomously operate and take care of the base level of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs for humans, what do humans actually care about? And do we actually move on to bigger problems? What do you think?
So I actually think like the full hierarchy will be AI-fied, and it's going to be more like, let's say, imagine right now you have enough money to do whatever you want, right? Like you still want to do something. Like for the most part, people want to do something. Maybe it's reading, maybe it's chilling on the beach, maybe there's still things you want to do. They just not need to be economically motivated, right? And so the interesting example, just to give you this idea, so there is sports. Sports is not economically, like the fact that somebody can run faster than the other person doesn't create more GDP, right? Now, people watching them and paying for merch, etc., does, but the sports itself doesn't create GDP. And so, but it's extremely rewarding to participate in it, and it's actually entertaining for people to watch and kind of cheer. And so I think we'll transition to more of activities like that, where the outcome is not about the economic product, but really more about either personal achievement, collective achievement, or in some way of participation. And I think there's plenty of different activities that kind of fall under that, and we just again haven't been really doing that because we actually need to do a lot of economic growth, right, to support our Maslow pyramid. So I think, and maybe that's not 5 years, that's probably like 25 years, but that's kind of the transition I see, where more and more of people actually doing things that are not about like GDP growth, but more about just like interesting things people want to do.
That's actually a very interesting observation. If you talk to the world's biggest entrepreneurs, often what they describe is they're more focused on a mission and a vision, and they're not as economically driven, and money is the byproduct. But what you're describing is a world where everyone would be more mission-driven, because either way, they can figure out how to get to a point where they can make money from it, and that would be the byproduct. That's super cool. And Adam, I'd love to learn more. Like, what do you think is going to happen in the next 5 years? And what is it that you personally feel would change in your life?
Yeah, I think I mostly share Illia's vision for the next 5 years. But to add on to that, I think, for example, user interfaces will be the exception rather than the norm. So yeah, rather than people visiting websites, everyone will have a personal digital twin that has known them for years and has all their personal data, like healthcare, financials, like relationships. And then using this data, this agent will go out to the world and basically act in your best interest. So whether that's ordering products or making sure that you uphold your New Year's resolutions. It will act in your best interest. And this is where things like user-owned memory and context will be extremely important. But yeah, that's kind of my vision for the next 5 years. And yeah, personally, I guess, I hope in 5 years I won't have to use like Google search or Chrome a lot, and I can just rely on my agents to do everything for me. That's kind of what I want to happen.
Awesome. So I'd love to learn more. This world that we're thinking about sounds very dystopian, because now we have our own digital twins operating on our behalf, which understands our preferences, and it understands who I am and can actually do everything for me and plan things for me. Now, in this world, what are the things that scare you the most? And what is, in your opinion, like our best defense against these things? Maybe, Adam, you can start here.
Sure. Yeah, I think for me there are 3 things that I'm scared of, and I think a lot of people will be scared of. First one is loss of control. So in this new model, you basically outsource a lot of the thinking to these agents, and unless you repeat all the things that the agent has done yourself, there is no way to verify if it has actually acted in your best interest or pick the best option for you. So I think the way to fix that is to have full traceability and verifiability for these agents. So yeah, this is where I think verifiability comes into the picture. So whether it's all the reasoning that the agent has done or all the tool calls on all the input that the agent has received, it needs to be available, on like a immutable ledger, hopefully, that you can check if anything goes wrong. And probably most people will not, actually read these, but just knowing that everything that the agent does is traceable and visible will force developers and agent vendors to be more honest. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is like security. So I think not a lot of people would be comfortable giving their credit card or their crypto wallet to agents. So that's where a lot of these payments, infrastructure, and intents come into play, where you can define what exactly you want to spend money on, what are the parameters that you want to see, and then the payments provider will ensure that the agent meets those requirements. And then the third one is privacy. So in order for these digital twins to be successful, they need to have access to your highly personal data. And in case that's provided by some centralized AI company, that's kind of like a total loss of privacy, which I think a lot of people would not be comfortable with. So to counter that, I think we need user-owned memory and data, where the user actually can decide what data they want to share with different agents. They can also make them portable, so they can move it from one agent to another agent or one provider to another provider. And just making sure that they are always in control and that a single company doesn't have monopoly over their digital life. So I think those are the three main things for me.
And Illia, are these the same for you, or what else are you scared of?
Yeah, I mean, those are definitely important aspects. I think the other interesting part is, I think we see this right now, AI is used more and more to effectively find cybersecurity vulnerabilities. And I think that is a pretty fundamental problem, that even if you use AI to audit your code, that doesn't mean that there's no bugs there and that another AI will not find them. And so we kind of like in this, race of, which AI will find bugs faster than somebody's AI will patch them. And I think we need a more fundamental solution, and like mathematics is effectively the fundamental solution. And you need like mathematical proofs for the software systems. And so my thesis here is we kind of need to rewrite the whole internet. The good thing is now we can do that pretty easily, tell AI to rewrite all the code, but it needs to be fully verifiable, mathematically proven that you get the properties you want from these interactions. And this actually fits really well with kind of intent outcome specification, because you can verify this real time. So I think that's like a pretty fundamental thing that we need. And for people who are not counting, there's been like multiple hacks in the smart contracts that have been around for 4 or 5 years. The reason why this is happening is because Opus 4.5. Is because the new models actually got better at finding vulnerabilities, and the old smart contracts, which were not audited by these models, effectively are now all vulnerable, right? And so this is going to continue, right? Everything written by 4.5 will get hacked by 5, right? And so you kind of always the hackers will always try to break you before you use a new AI to patch it. So we need like a actually fundamental fix for this.
That's very interesting. That is actually very interesting. And where are we in this space today when it comes to formal verification methods? Do you think that this is something that we're going to be able to see in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, so there's like a number of companies working on now using AI to do formal verification, because generally formal verification is a very laborious and slow process. And so, I think we'll see kind of some good progress on this in the next couple of years, and hopefully faster, because this is actually a very pressing problem. I think we'll need to design even the API calls around this kind of outcome specification, where you effectively say, hey, if I'm giving, for example, a piece of my personal data, I want you to ensure that you're not going to leak it, for example, right? Like that needs to be part of the API call now. And so there's kind of, that's why I'm like, we kind of need to rewrite the whole internet with that design in mind. Again, the good thing is, you just set up an LLM to do that, and, leave for the lunch, and you're done.
Fingers crossed, yeah. I guess what you're describing is a whole new standard for communication between different platforms and different agents. And where we are today, as you described, is a very hacky solution. We're at the MCP stage, but I guess we have a lot of work to do to make it much more robust infrastructure so that it doesn't break at all these points. And we also have to ensure that the agents that are checking this code are not really lying to you. So you're not really, I guess, at risk at every step. But coming to, yeah, I guess this whole new world where we have all of these different services communicating with each other and like all these disposable armies of agents for everyone. So what do you both personally believe, and Adam, maybe you can begin with answering this question. So what do you personally think would be the best way for users to start actually extracting value out of this today? Everybody now has a disposable army that they can utilize for anything. And so what would you do?
What would I do? I think for me, the biggest value add outside of like coding, for example, is just automating like everyday tasks. Like, I don't know, for example, if I'm looking for like a new rental apartment, just sending out the emails, replying, maybe looking through the different listings and picking the ones that might be interesting for me. So just kind of automating the boring things that I don't personally like. I think we are not quite there yet with the agents that are available today, but I think in the near future, that's something that I would like to, try and introduce in my life. So I think, yeah, that would be a good starting point.
I see. So what you're describing is essentially like what we're going to be doing is we're going to take all the mundane tasks that we don't enjoy doing, and we'll hand them off to an army of agents so that we actually have time to think about what we want to think about.
Yeah. Like maybe people don't even need to talk to each other directly. They can just talk to each other's digital twins, and then you kind of only reach out once there is some conflict or more difficult questions. So I think that's something that might happen as well.
So that's Adam's unique way of taking away the awkwardness of first dates. Yeah. And
turn people into APIs.
That sounds like a wonderful world. And Illia, yeah, tell us more. What do you think that is something that we could do so that, or one workflow that we could do today using all of the existing infrastructure that maybe other people have not looked into, outside of travel booking, of course?
Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe just to comment on Adam's, like what you described is example of what I think people should not do, which is like automating a sub-process of a sub-process of like, yeah, I'm trying to find an apartment, so maybe my AI will automate replying to the messages. My point is more like specify the intent. Hey, I want a good apartment that like satisfies this criteria, and give it to kind of this intent marketplace. And then if the kind of agents, if the real estate agents don't use AI, right, there will be AI proxy that will do it, or the real estate agent already directly will be AI agent in the first place. And so I think like we should just like kind of end-to-end fix these types of flows instead of trying to patch it and like have an AI, replying here and there. But I think like, I mean, right now there's a bunch of tools. Like the problem is a lot of this right now is kind of works like 50, 60%, and so if you're not willing to accept the pain, it may be not as useful. But I think like we'll see kind of pretty quick, closing the gap, right? Like, I mean, for coding, if we talk about beginning of 2025, right? Like, everybody was like, web coding is cool, but in reality, it barely worked, right? Now, front ends are pretty much working, right? You need to tell it to not make it gradient of violet for all the time. But there's MCP server for the browser, so it can like debug it itself, right? It can connect to the its own cloud deployment and test everything. So like it can do now iterations internally. So like similarly for as we go down the list of like, okay, plan a marketing campaign, It can create creative, it can prepare things, it can do this, right? You may still want to have someone who knows what's happening to like adjust it and navigate it, but it can go and execute, put the ads into the different places, do all those things, right? Again, ideally, you turn it into an intent and say, hey, I want a marketing campaign that generates 10,000 signups, like qualified signups, and then it will come back with like a plan and approach. But I think like a lot of the kind of different tasks are now can be done in this end-to-end way.
I see. That's a very interesting world. So basically, I'll just have to describe, I want to film a video in Lisbon, and essentially there would be an army of agents that are going to do all of the different sub-process, such as like getting the venue, hiring videographers, and like making sure that everybody shows up on time. And so here, I would just have to post this intent, and then the world of agents would fulfill it.
Yeah, it'll come back and says, hey, yeah, for $20,000, we'll make it work. And so
nice.
you just deposit money here.
So it seems like all we have to do in the future is just know how to ask good questions and make sure that we can have we really know how to get maximum value out of an infinite army of agents. But yeah, that was a very interesting conversation, and I would like to thank Illia and Adam both for their answers today, and thank you everyone for being here. We just concluded the panel, and yes.
Really, really great job, guys, and Advait, amazing moderation. We actually have a couple of minutes for some questions before our next panel. Yes, okay, I'm coming to you with a microphone.
Thank you. The corporations will probably always have benefit in their models. But, like, if we're comparing model that's available to me and the model that's available to corporation, they will probably outpace us in training. Are there any realities in which humans can have like a decentralized trained model that is like kind of can compete with corporations-based models?
So the question that you're asking, if I understand correctly, is like how can decentralized AI networks compete with centralized entities?
Yeah, basically, can we have a good enough model that can compete with like models that are trained for billions of dollars?
Oh.
Will try to extract profits from us.
I mean, it's a good question. I think the difference is any centralized company will end up kind of, I mean, it's traditional S-curve, right? Like you first going from 0 to 1 as a company to figure out what you're doing, then you have growth, you saturate your market, and then you kind of trying to extract more value from the same market, right? And so that's kind of the challenge with centralized companies, that they will, like one way or another, will be limited by that model. They will be limited by kind of set of, like a lot of government constraints, like OpenAI already having pressure to like, it should be not as woke, it should be more woke. It's like, so all of those, this is the challenges they need to deal with, where in, decentralized world, the benefit is you can actually have a lot more open model where like people can contribute their data into it to train across larger set of people. But indeed, and you can raise capital that is like, aligned with the users, right? Like, let's say you're selling through a token, which means like for example, you're paying for training by selling the token, and the token holders are now very incentivized in the success of this model. Right, so they're going to be using it, they're going to be, improving it, et cetera. So that's kind of the trade-off. Is like, yes, in the beginning, the centralized companies are way more equipped to do this, but they have a kind of a ceiling where when they become too big, there's too much pressure from different sides. Versus decentralized, it'll be slower to start and it's harder to coordinate, but then it has a lot better value alignment between the kind of people and users and kind of capital formation. But we'll see. I mean, it's up to us to prove it.
Do you have any thoughts, Adam?
Yeah, I think right now centralized companies are just like too effective compared to decentralized AI companies. So I think it's going to be hard to compete there, both I think financially, like organizationally, and technically. Like it's just more efficient to be a simple company, especially in the world of AI. Hopefully, in a few years, we can get there where you know, crypto and right now, I'm not sure if you know, we are quite there yet.
Maybe where we are today, we could make domain-specific models that are specialized for certain tasks, and we could use decentralized mechanisms to coordinate the funding, as Illia said, and also like the development. But if we were competing at a God model level, so to speak, against the centralized providers, I think we still have a little bit of a way to go. But does anyone else also have another question?
Agent marketplaces. Do you see the expression of intent for tasks to be completed, whether it's book me a holiday, build me a website? Do you see redundancy of task completion as a feature or a bug or something else?
Sorry, the what of task completion?
So if I submit some task to the marketplace, build me a front end for my back end, do you see redundancy in that task completion as a feature or a bug?
I mean, it's the same as, like, the idea here is the same as if you go to Upwork, right? You can hire multiple people to build, you know, multiple alternatives and choose the best one, or you can hire one and pay more to ensure higher quality. I mean, here you'll have, like, the prototype I was showing, you get multiple agents effectively to bid on your, you know, build me a front end. You choose depending, they have a reputation, they have history. You can choose which one, or you can choose multiple and, you know, see which one is the best. So it is an optionality.
Does that answer your question?
One final question from anyone? Tyler?
Hey, thanks guys, really appreciate that. Just curious, like, if you are bullish on the long-term future of AI, how do you see a roadmap? We talked about a lot of front-end sort of use cases. I sort of just like type things into ChatGPT, Gemini, like I use all the chats, but I'm probably a beginner at AI, so like whether it's from the macro perspective, is there like a tech bottleneck to get to the future of, you know, a utopian future of AI? Or are there like front-end things that we could do while at the same time like organizations or macro organizations are integrating more, you know, elegant technologies, stuff like that?
Yeah, I think for me, like user interfaces is definitely a big part of it. Like I think right now the chat interface, the chat interface is how most people use AI, and that's kind of like the base layer. But I think for AI to be actually, you know, used by different businesses and like average people, kind of needs to evolve beyond that. I don't know what that UI will look like exactly, but I think we are still just like scratching the surface. Like, you know, people can use AI for coding and for like, you know, texting or chatting, but it's not really, it hasn't really replaced like apps or, you know, very specific applications on your phone, for example. So I think innovating in that space is going to be very important to actually, you know, unleash the power of AI for, you know, various use cases and like business applications. So yeah, that's my view on that.
Maybe you can slightly dig deeper into that. So what is this ideal user interface? Like, what can it look like? Do you envision it as like glasses that we are all wearing and that automatically like operate in the real world and help me with different things? Or is it maybe we are using more voice and there's somebody listening and then kind of like taking my intents and then building what I need?
Yeah, I'm personally not a big believer of like AR and VR glasses, so I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's just too like weird to wear them, but maybe I'll be wrong. I think voice could be interesting, but again, like people, I don't think, you know, really like talking in public and like letting everyone hear their problems or their you know, goals. So I think it's going to be more like a traditional interface, like on your smartphone, but I don't really know exactly how it will look like. I think it's still kind of up in the air, and people need to like innovate and try out different things.
Do you have any thoughts, Illia?
I mean, there are a few aspects, right? If we're talking about, for example, voice, there's actually, I just saw an interesting startup. The form factor is interesting because effectively, anytime you're in a meeting, it actually does the work while you're talking. So, like, hey, we should, prepare a demo for the next week. It's actually started building the demo, wrote a script, and already like attached it. And so that's like a different form factor. Like if you talk about UX, because, I don't know, I'm spend a ton of time in video calls. Like imagine, like actually the work was being done during that as well. Not me just switching to another tab and trying to respond to emails in parallel. So there is like interesting innovations like that. And then the other one is just, like just plugging in more actions, more context. Like right now, if you use ChatGPT, it probably doesn't have most of your context. And, for example, I don't want to add my email there because it has a lot of private information there. And so privacy is important. Like your screen, if your AI can observe your screen in real time, suggest things, I mean, same with meetings, but like even broader. Again, privacy is extremely important for that. So, I mean, there's kind of products maturing, OpenGradient, us, and a few others who like pushing envelope on what's possible there. But yeah, it's only kind of starting to work like in the past few months.
Well, that's amazing. That's a world where you don't have to worry about the next step, but the next step is automatically taken care of.
Action items already done by the That's a vision.
All right, fantastic job. Once again, big applause for the moderator. Thank you, Advait. Thank you, Adam. You guys are free to go.